Hello, everyone. I'm Julian Constance, a Senior Employer Brand Consultant here at LinkedIn. The insights I'm going to outline in the next 30 minutes are from LinkedIn's Global Talent Trends 2020 report, a combination of survey results from more than 7,000 talent professionals in 35 countries, LinkedIn behavioral data, and 40 interviews with talent leaders from around the world. This is a high-level deck focusing on the 4 talent trends that were revealed by the report. I'll discuss these trends in a bit more detail, outline what they might mean for you, your team, and business, and give some data-driven recommendations outlining how, strategically, these trends should help inform and shape your employer brand strategy. I'll also talk through a couple of case studies, as well as highlighting some more tactical, easy-to-action tips to ensure your talent team can practically, positively, and measurably impact your wider business this year. With the rise of machine learning and artificial intelligence, businesses across sectors are becoming automated. In fact, as many as half of current work activities have the potential to be automated by 2055, according to McKinsey Global Institute research. The effect of that shift is estimated to be a 24% rise in hours spent by US and European workers focused on soft skill tasks. So it should come as no surprise that empathy is the theme that emerges so strongly from this report. As we enter the 2020s, empathy will reshape the way employers hire and retain talent. Companies will work to understand their talent more deeply than ever before in order to better serve them. Empathy can be seen in each of this year's trends: the emergence of employee experience with new ways to cater to employees, the adolescence of people analytics with its emphasis on understanding human behavior, the rediscovery of internal recruiting with a focus on advancing people's careers from within, and the maturation of the multi-general workforce with the importance of celebrating everyone's strengths. The desire is clear. The 2020s will be all about putting people first, but the key will be whether real change is achieved and how robustly the impact of this change is measured. It's clear that talent professionals consider these 4 trends fundamental to hiring and retaining talent. But will we see a willingness to completely rethink leadership and management, for example? Is there a genuine appetite to innovate through nurturing values like flexibility and pluralism, as opposed to enforcing conformity and standardized process? And will a new set of people-focused KPIs and OKRs aligned with employee happiness and satisfaction come to play a significant part in measuring an employee's performance? There's no question that employee experience is becoming hugely important at most organizations. HR teams are going all in on employee experience to keep employees happy and therefore improve retention, which in turn authentically builds their employer brand and aids talent attraction. Beyond collecting feedback, companies need to actively collaborate with employees to create an experience that's attractive to and engages as many employees as possible. People analytics has promised to revolutionize recruiting and HR for a decade, but until recently, only the most sophisticated companies have reaped the rewards. Now we're reaching an inflection point where data is accessible to all. If HR wants to enhance its relevance at the C-suite table, guesswork simply won't do. Employer brand teams often lead the charge to understand what business-critical talent pools aspire to in their careers and their perception of the various top employers out there. Internal recruiting is becoming much more important because the chances are you're overlooking a promising talent pool, your own people. Currently, most internal hiring happens thanks to proactive moves from employees. It's time for recruiters to create a formal internal hiring program, working with the learning and development team to build the skills needed for the future. It's likely to be far more cost-effective than constantly hiring when new skills are needed. And there's a definite desire for employees to learn more and more broadly in their careers. Lastly, multi-generational workforces are here. Later retirements and the arrival of Gen Z means companies are seeing more age diversity than ever. Young, seasoned, and everyone in between can help prove that good work is ageless. It's on companies to help age-diverse teams discover their best selves by creating the conditions for collaboration, knowledge exchange, and sensitivities relevant to each generation. Let's focus now on trend one. It's fair to state that work used to be about conforming. Organizations pushed out rules and plans, and employees simply complied. But as competition for talent tightens, workers have become more skilled, and people want to achieve greater balance in their lives, power has shifted from institutions to individuals. In fact, a staggering 96% of talent professionals say employee experience is becoming increasingly important within their organizations. Today, more businesses are looking at everything they do through the lens of employee experience, now commonly referred to as EX. And EX is everything an employee observes, feels, and interacts with as part of and through their company. It's distinct from employee engagement. While engagement is the end goal, engaged employees are obviously more committed and productive. EX is a means of getting employees to that point. Expanding a traditional corporate function has to be worthwhile investment for your bottom line, and of course, companies aren't elevating EX only for altruistic reasons. Businesses invest in a better work experience because they're looking for better results and greater yield. But making sense of all of this might seem daunting, so I'd suggest breaking it down into a manageable, measurable process by adopting what we call the 4P approach. Consider the people. Who's the relevant audience, and who else needs to be involved? The place. Where does all of this happen? In the office, the home, and which other locations? And then the product, the what. What do you make, or what services do you offer? Lastly, the process, or the how. What needs to change, and what tools and technology will facilitate this change? While it's common sense that a good employee experience gets people to stay, now we've got the data to back it up. We looked at over 1,000 companies rated on key EX components like training and flexibility, and then cross-referenced that with employee behavioral data that we saw on LinkedIn. The results speak for themselves. Companies rated highly for employee training, for example, saw 53% lower attrition, and companies rated highly for open and effective management saw 143% higher headcount growth. These are not insignificant numbers, and all need to be taken into account when you're creating awareness, attraction, and engagement collateral for your employer brand. Just over 2/3 of companies report EX has improved over the past 5 years, yet only half say their EX is positive. Consider the gravity of having only half your workers feel they're getting an excellent experience. If they're not on their way out, they're likely performing well below their capabilities. What impact is this having on your employer brand, and what's it costing your business? The EX factor most in need of improvement is compensation and benefits, which is hardly surprising. But even if you're paying workers fairly, there are still several other pieces of EX that need to work. Not only management and culture, but tools and processes too. In a world where paying bills and buying shoes takes mere seconds on a phone, quite understandably, we've come to expect the same speed and simplicity at work. One of the main reasons that employee experience suffers is that whilst companies are listening to workers, they're not always taking action. Employees who don't believe their company will act on their feedback are 7 times more likely to be disengaged than those who do, according to data from Glint. This is hugely significant and suggests that if you're going to ask, you've got to be prepared to act, or you're doing far more damage than good. If there's no clear owner of EX, start with the leadership of your HR, people, or talent function. When those at the top lead with care and respect, employees inevitably follow suit. And beware, there is much anecdotal evidence to suggest a do as I say, not as I do approach simply doesn't work in this case. Once you gain more resource, hiring a dedicated EX professional will help ensure you meet your goals and stay aligned with those of the business. The good news is these roles are on the rise, a sign that companies are starting to invest in this important priority and are very often aligned with the employer brand team. It comes down to this. You should care about how your people feel because it's the right thing to do, and because it improves productivity and reduces attrition and costs. But when you ask for feedback, your people must feel safe being honest about their experience, and crucially, you must use the results to action some sort of change. So let's look at an example of a company who are prepared to face up to the reality of their employee experience and make the necessary changes to improve it. Despite its strong culture and passionate workforce, Forrester realized the company had limited insight into what was driving employee engagement. So their chief people officer used Glint to better measure the full scope of the employee experience, providing her team with a more immediate and precise level of understanding. The team discovered hidden barriers to engagement, one of which was employees' disappointment with the company's parental leave policy in the US. What had been anecdotal evidence became quantifiable feedback. So they actioned change. Based on the Glint survey and bolstered by new market data, the case was made to enhance the company's parental leave policy. The survey also revealed issues around the leave experience before, during, and after the arrival of a child. In collaboration with a group of employees, the people team journey mapped the parental leave experience and discovered pockets of confusion and guilt among employees going on leave, colleagues covering for a leave, and managers administering leave. The team then involved employees in developing structured guidance for the future. The outcome was a much improved leave policy, with more time off and better pay. The company formalized and standardized what a good parental leave experience looks like. Employees felt heard, involved, and proud to work for a company that cared for people at a personal level, and when experiencing such a significant, emotional, life-changing milestone. Forrester aspires to replicate the approach, sharing ownership of both data and solutions with employees to improve other employee experiences. This then translates into employer brand awareness and attraction messages because it gives their team authentic, positive stories about employee engagement to push out to new business-critical talent pools. So here are some actionable tips that take account of this trend and can help drive and shape elements of your employer brand. Listen and act continuously. You'll gain credibility with employees when you take action on their feedback in a timely manner and are open about the process you go through to do this. The key here is to survey frequently so you can create a continuous feedback action loop. If you can't take action immediately, for any reason, be sure to set those expectations up front. Map the journey. Find out what moments matter most in the employee journey. Uncover key experiences and milestones through employee interviews, focus groups, and surveys. Your EX is unique, so you can't find these answers anywhere other than from your own employees. And encourage honesty, but be sure to create an environment in which employees are confident this honesty will be acknowledged and appreciated, and they won't pay a harsh price for it later on. Share ownership. Regardless of function, think about how to involve employees in identifying and solving problems. Getting people to perform their regular tasks with and for employees requires a mindset shift. Need a new learning platform? Don't just have learning and development make a decision. Ask your employees how they'd like to learn and work out how best to measure how you've achieved this. Win small. Rather than a massive overhaul of whatever system is broken, try a small fix and see what you learn. Questions like, what's the one thing you'd change about your onboarding experience? Or, if you could kill one rule we have, what would it be? Can help pinpoint where to start. Don't underestimate the power of minor improvements. And also remember that generally, one big change isn't likely to happen, nor does it often totally change the outcome. A series of smaller, incremental changes is more likely to lead to more significant, far-reaching change. Be open. Show where you're putting money and time. Share feedback results transparently and quickly. Employees want a two-way dialogue. Being upfront builds trust, but communicate your track record and business cases where you need it. Your employer brand will benefit. Remember, your employer brand isn't just an attraction tool. It's also crucial that it's deployed and managed internally. What you say to potential employees about your business and the experience of working there must be authentic or your attrition rate will rise, which will soon lead to issues with talent attraction. So be sure that when you do bring about positive change to improve the employee experience, you communicate it internally and externally. Moving on to trend 2, and considering business trends over the past decade, people analytics has been heralded as the factor that will revolutionize the way HR works. The only problem? It's been a revolution for an elite few, not for the masses. While some enterprises have benefited from people analytics for years, most companies have been stuck struggling with basics, but that's about to change. People analytics can sound overwhelming when we talk about it as a whole, but it becomes more manageable when you break it down into specific use cases. The top areas where companies are currently using analytics include employee performance and workforce planning. After that, the talent pipeline gets significant attention. Companies are applying data to evaluate recruiting channels, identify skill gaps, assess talent supply and demand, and to determine what perception key talent holds about them as a potential employer. Fully appreciate the impact people analytics can have, it's helpful to see where companies intend to grow. Top growth areas include analyzing competitive intelligence, flight risks, and candidate success. As you can see, however, over half of talent professionals still aren't sure how to apply people analytics. So let's break it down into manageable bits. People analytics mastery involves acing the 5 stages shown here. Many can get past the first 1 or 2, but struggle when it comes to drawing conclusions and, crucially, taking action. Almost half of companies feel positive about maintaining clean, accurate data, an essential foundation to any people analytics practice. We see a drop-off, though, in the analyzing stage. Only 39% feel confident drawing meaningful insights from their data. There's a similar drop-off in the transition from acting, for example, solving existing problems with insights, to capitalizing, which is basically taking competitive advantage of new opportunities using insights. Another common challenge is that many companies are comfortable acting after a spike in attrition, but fewer would be able to proactively hire ahead of a spike in demand. This can and should be a decision that is made using data, allowing you to flex up your employer brand awareness activity at key times, knowing how it will boost attraction efforts further down the line. So where should you start? As ever, start small and test, and remember that doing something well is better than doing nothing at all. Here are 3 tips to guide you. A small but focused pilot can prove the value of analytics and help you win more buy-in from your company. But before you dive in, you'll want to collaborate with leadership to find one problem that everyone agrees is worth studying further. If you can achieve this stakeholder buy-in and support from the outset, you've got a much better chance of maintaining interest and encouraging action once the data is ready. If you're unsure where to start, identifying reasons for turnover is a popular objective with a clear ROI. This is a good starting point for most companies, and particularly those who've not previously trialed data-led decisions. You'll undoubtedly gain actionable insights. As you start working on people analytics problems with various stakeholders, you can consult this matrix from LinkedIn's own people analytics team to help structure your workflow. Start by asking what business issue you're trying to solve and work out how you'll measure the impact of any initiative you put in place. Then work out how best to bring to light insights you can actually use, who you'll benchmark yourselves against, and of course, whether to take into account any data you've already got. Once these things are decided, you can move into the analysis phase. Finally, communicate your findings and the actions you'll be undertaking as a result, and how you intend to track success of any changes or initiatives you introduce as a result. Planning for future workforce needs is one of the most popular uses of analytics. To ensure you cover your bases, start by working out how many new and replacement hires will be required in the months or years ahead. Gather as much data as possible about current turnover and work with business strategists and heads of department to understand where and how growth will occur. It's important too to identify the talent pools that are critical to continued business growth and success. This will help you create HR goals that dovetail with those of the business as a whole. If you can show how HR achieving its goals helps the business achieve its goals, you've got much greater chance of securing budget and buy-in to create an employer brand strategy using people analytics. And now that you've assessed future needs, it's time to study the external landscape to find the best places to look for the required skills, diversity, levels of seniority, and other factors. This helps inform your channel or media strategy. Then you can create your content strategy by researching your industry and talent competitors, working out what messaging resonates best with certain target audiences, and why they might choose to work at your company as opposed to any other. Train 3 used to be a standard business practice. Organizations used to fill open roles by promoting their own people, moving employees along one career path for a lifetime. But in recent decades, companies started hiring talent away from other companies. Outsiders were already trained and easier to recruit because they employer hopped to get ahead and a pay rise. Today, internal recruiting is making a gradual comeback. Role changes within organizations by promotion, transfer, or lateral move have increased steadily by 10% over the last 5 years, according to LinkedIn data. The obvious question is why? The answer is that organizations are rediscovering how cost-effective it is to recruit their own people. Workplace learning is also helping to build skills internally, so there's less need to import them from elsewhere. Lastly, it's an effective tool through which to positively engage your employees who feel as if their careers are progressing, and professional opportunity needn't necessarily be sourced outside of their current organization. All of this feeds into a positive employee experience, which can be translated into an authentic and effective employer brand strategy. And this last point is the most widely cited benefit of internal recruiting: better retention. In promoting or moving employees to better matched roles, you boost morale, create a more positive experience, and entice them to stick around. Internal hires also ramp up more quickly than external hires. There's no need to train an employee from the ground up, since they're already familiar with company systems, processes, people, and culture. Their organizational knowledge is a huge asset as well, so by maximizing internal hires, organizations can avoid what are often unnecessary additional costs. But currently, internal mobility is driven primarily by employees. As promising as internal recruiting is to a company's upside, very few have an organized process in place. Talent professionals report that most internal moves happen when an employee proactively seeks out an opportunity or a hiring manager reaches out to a colleague. In short, it's mostly through serendipity. It's time for hiring managers and recruiters to take a more active, intentional role in internal hiring. Roughly 2/3 of talent professionals acknowledge their company needs to improve its internal recruiting. But what's the biggest thing standing in their way? Managers themselves, mostly, who don't want to lose their best talent. The problem is that if those top performers can't leave their team for greener pastures internally, they're more likely to leave the company altogether. Another key barrier is that hiring from within makes it harder, ironically, to diversify your workforce. But by not having a formal internal recruiting practice, diversity suffers even more. When internal hiring happens organically without structure, people are more likely to rely on casual networks, which very often just entrench existing groups and biases. At most companies, internal hires will happen whether or not there's a strategic program in place. The difference is that when internal hiring happens informally through personal referrals, results and diversity are often worse. A study of 11,000 internal hires published in the Harvard Business Review found that employees hired by informal, relationship-based referrals consistently underperformed compared to those hired by more formal processes. To avoid these pitfalls, companies need to implement and improve their programs. According to our survey, the key elements of such a program include more cross-functional projects, more accurate mapping of current employees' skills, and a greater likelihood of linking upskilling with opportunities. Today, very few talent acquisition and learning and development teams collaborate to fix organizational skills gaps. Working in silos, recruiters opt for external hires rather than the lower cost option of recruiting internally and upskilling. Meanwhile, L&D leaders create learning programs that aren't always tied to specific roles or needs. These inefficiencies will start to disappear as organizations call for tighter partnerships between recruiting and L&D. So let's look at a quick case study that relates to internal recruiting, focusing on AT&T. AT&T projects an enormous need for employees with skills in emerging areas, such as software and network engineering, data science, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and automation. A massive investment in reskilling for its 250,000 employees is the right thing to do when building a relevant, internally mobile workforce. The company invests about $200 million annually on internal training programs and $24 million each year in tuition assistance. It offers a wide variety of training options from bite-sized video micro-trainings to new certification learning paths. A proprietary career intelligence platform helps empower employees to take control of their own development and careers, giving them insights on how company roles have evolved, with the opportunity to build a learning path for a desired position. Employees also get access to job and salary data so they can make informed decisions about what skills to develop and add to their competency profiles. In the past 2 years, employees have completed 2.7 million courses and logged 4 million training hours. Employees who engage in the program are much more likely to get a new job at AT&T or to get a promotion. As more employees update their profiles on the Career Intelligence platform, AT&T leaders are able to search for employees with relevant skills and quickly identify strong internal candidates for open positions. So here are some tips that will help you integrate some of these learnings into your employer brand strategy. Proactively reach out. Most internal hires today are initiated by hiring managers or employees themselves. Team managers and recruiters need to play a bigger role. A call from an internal recruiter can be a retention tool too, whether or not the person moves. It's a pat on the back that says an employee is respected and valued. Formalize the process for greater diversity. Organic internal moves often happen through existing networks and relationships, which can discourage diversity. Internal recruiting should be structured and proactive, rather than relying on employees finding opportunities on their own. As a key issue in employer branding, reviewing diversity data and formalizing your approach to diversity is likely to yield results. Partner with L&D. You'll have a larger talent pool if you think about developing talent for future skills rather than recruiting talent with fixed skills. Work with your L&D colleagues to identify missing skills and upskilling opportunities to help fill in the gaps. Don't seek perfection. Neither external nor internal hires typically come with 100% of needed skills and experience. Be prepared to train and support your talent as they move into new roles. Also, question whether you're asking for skills that aren't, in fact, really necessary for the role. Don't be afraid to challenge convention in this sense, because as the world-renowned Grace Hopper once commented, the most dangerous phrase in the English language is "don't worry, we've always done it this way." Prove the payoff. Give managers good reasons to let go of the top performer. Use data and anecdotes to prove how it's a win for your company and ultimately for them and their team. Consider making internal recruiting part of performance reviews and offering incentives tied to pay and advancement. Give employees a great candidate experience. Every application deserves a polite response, even if it's a templated rejection. Provide a good experience even for those who don't get hired. A hiring manager may even coach candidates and discuss development opportunities to prepare for success the next time round. Consider the downside of rejection and take action to safeguard against it. If you don't, it discredits much of your employer brand efforts and initiatives and ultimately costs the business time and money. And now we move on to the last of the 4 trends. 2 factors, longer lifespans and Gen Z arrival in the workplace, are driving a radical explosion in workforce age diversity. To attract and retain all ages, some companies are getting creative, carving out new career paths, flexible benefits, and ways for generations to share intelligence. But that's still far from the norm. The 4 cohorts comprising the bulk of today's workforce are Generation Z, whose current ages are 7 to 22, and they make up 10% of today's workforce. Millennials are aged 23 to 38 and comprise 40% of the workforce. Generation X are 39 to 54, and they make up 33% of the workforce, meaning baby boomers aged 55 to 73 make up the remaining 15%. Generations share more similarities than differences when it comes to what they value at work. Everyone loves good compensation and benefits, work-life balance, and a positive work culture. So these elements of commonality should be used to attract all generations across your business-critical talent pools into your talent pipeline. After that, each generation does show subtle differences, yielding clues to their overarching attitudes, and these factors should be used to inform your employer brand strategy and create an inviting culture and workplace. While all generations value companies with purposeful missions, it's boomers who are most likely to call it a top priority. Gen Z, meanwhile, is most likely to value training. 36% called it a top factor when considering a new job. That said, new research from LinkedIn Learning also shows that every generation is investing time to pick up new skills. Many Gen Z workers are students or they've recently won their first entry-level job, so it makes sense that those in Gen Z are 135% more likely than baby boomers to be in a part-time or contract role. These numbers may also speak to the fact that more companies are choosing to use contract labor or gig economy workers to quickly respond to fast-moving conditions. Baby boomers and Gen X have been in the workplace longer and are more likely to have greater stability with full-time roles. Generational contrasts can create sparks of energy, creativity, and innovation, or they can be the source of negative friction. Company leaders have a responsibility to move past any generational conflicts by fostering respect, inclusion, and collaboration. Here, solution-oriented conversations are especially important around the biggest perceived danger zones. So let's consider 5 useful tips regarding the multi-generational workforce. Don't put anyone in a box. While understanding generational trends and traits can be helpful, it's important to treat each person as a unique individual who may or may not fit into their generation's ethos. Older workers typically call upon decades of experience to make more methodical and careful decisions, but the 60-something member of your team could easily be your fastest, wildest, most creative thinker. Seek wisdom everywhere. Consider asking employees who they seek out for advice besides their boss. Certain employees may emerge as helpful counselors with specific areas of expertise that can be made known to an even larger audience. Realize that everyone wants their work to matter. Having a strong organizational purpose makes people feel part of something valuable, regardless of their age, rank, or span of control. Social media and the normalizing of the humble brag has heightened the pressure for everyone to claim to be a superstar. Being part of a larger mission helps ease the tension to change the world, or at least claiming to be, or by yourself. Promoting formal interaction across generations. People tend to gravitate towards others in their own demographic. It doesn't hurt to remind folks to seek out conversations with other generations at conferences, networking events, or even just sitting in the cafeteria or on the train. This conscious choice often yields new perspective. Create safety for all workers to share their knowledge. It's not unusual or unfounded for senior employees scarred by downsizing and outsourcing to feel threatened by the younger generations. Younger workers may feel insecure about sharing advice with more experienced colleagues. Often the response is to hoard knowledge instead of sharing it. It's important to create the psychological safety for everyone to spread key learnings. And if you achieve this, talk about it. It's a positive message and one potential employees will find attractive about your organization. In closing, it's important to recognize the value of using data to inform many of your employer brand initiatives. It will help you achieve stakeholder buy-in and show clear return on investment. And it's crucial too to recognize employer brand isn't just an attraction tool. Make sure what you're portraying as an accurate representation of life at your company is true, or attrition and the perception of your business will suffer. Thank you for hanging in there.